Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be doing a quick sew along, a run through of this pattern. It's a NewLook 6476. It's a fairly easy pattern, but I originally did this on Instagram stories, but I wanted to turn it into a YouTube video. Most of my videos will be recorded in that camera. It's just easier for me, especially because all I have is my phone camera. So they will be kind of in that Instagram stories format until I figure out my GoPro camera. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. I will also put my Instagram name below so you guys can follow me there. And if there's any questions you have on the pattern itself, if you get stuck, you need some advice, send me a message on Instagram and we can talk on there. I hope you guys enjoy. I'm getting ready to start my duster with this purple fabric. I'm going to be doing view A minus this. My nails look horrible. Oh my gosh, I didn't repaint them. Anyway, minus the tie, just the duster, no tie. So I have a few friends that want to learn how to sew, and I'm going to try my hardest to walk through this pattern. This is NewLook 6476, and I've seen a couple of my favorite IG sewing bloggers that have made this pattern, so I went ahead and bought it to make it as well. Right now I am going to cut out the pattern, but in case for the people that are just starting with patterns, this I learned in a pattern sewing class that I took. This little line here is the grain line, goes all the way down, and you want to usually measure from the grain line to the selvage edge of your fabric to line it up correctly, especially if you have like a pattern on your fabric that you want to keep even, and it'll tell you which direction to lay the pattern. So if it's like this, you want to lay it going up and down. If it's across, then you want to line it up with the selvage edge of your fabric, and then you're going to measure it all the way down and pin it in place. So here we have about 6 inches from my line to my selvage. I'm going to pin it here, and then I'm going to make sure that this whole entire line is 6 inches from my selvage. So usually I measure the top, and then I measure a little bit further down. I measure the end there to make sure it's 6 inches, and then I just measure everything else to make sure it's 6 inches just really quickly. So yeah. So to show you guys real quick, I pinned here at the top where you guys saw me originally measuring. Then I pinned down kind of off the middle. It's not quite the middle, but I pinned here, that's 6 inches. And then I pinned at the bottom, it's 6 inches. So it should all be all lined up. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin my corners. That's all I learned. It's all basic stuff, but this is what I learned in that pattern sewing class. And I'm going to pin it here at 14 so that I can fold it over and cut here instead of cutting all the way at 18, since 14 is the size I'm going to need. And I'm just going to cut underneath there. I didn't cut a 14 because if I have, like, my sister wants one, she's about a 16, so I didn't want to cut it and then not have that size to make her one later on, because I know she might want one later on. Okay, so I went over the markings on the pattern in the last video and I had to get deleted, so here we go. These patterns have markings on them, so I told you that's the grain line, and each pattern has, well, this pattern has different views, and you use the same piece for the different views. So if you look here, it says cutting for views B and C. This is where you would cut it. For view D, you would cut it here, so it's shorter. I'm doing view A, it's longer. I know view C comes with an extra piece that you have to cut out of the pattern to add at the bottom, but I didn't cut that out because I'm not doing that. So what I would do if I wanted to do this one here, view B, I would just fold it up here at my size so I don't have to cut this all out. So I just fold it where I want it, but since I'm using the full length, this is what I cut. So these things are called notches, and I usually clip into the fabric to make the little notches. I don't know if you can see them. There they are. And usually they match the other pattern piece. So this is the back, and it's the side seam where the sleeve's gonna go. And this is the side for, wait, is this the side? No, it's not. It's over here. See, and it has a matching notch. This is the front and the side seam. So I usually just cut it here because it's going to go within that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance that you do when you're sewing these together. The shoulders have notches as well, and that shoulder seam will match the notch on this shoulder seam. So that is a rundown of the notches. So this one has 3. This is the back and this is the center seam. So we're gonna notch both pieces that we cut out because we have to cut 2 pieces. So that one has the 3 notches in it, and this one has the 3 notches in it. So when I'm sewing it together, those notches are together. It means I have it all lined up how it's supposed to be. And that is the rundown of notches. I will explain these to you in my next ones. I just got to upload these so Instagram doesn't go and zoom them all in. So here are some other markings on the pattern, these dots. On this pattern, these dots are for a carrier right here. You can't see it, but I'm afraid to go close. There you go. There's these little carriers for the belt. So the little loops you put the belt through. Usually you mark these on your pattern with something like this. I have a water soluble pen, marker, whatever it's called. This side you wipe it off. You can wipe it off with some with some water. And this side just disappears with air. So I don't really use this side a lot unless I'm going to sew it right away. But when I'm cutting out my patterns, I use this side because it lasts until you wipe it off. So you might just want to get the blue pen because it comes in just the blue pen or just the purple pen. I got the half and half one, don't know why. But so usually I just poke a hole through it with the tip of the marker and I mark it on there. I did do it with the coats. If you guys were look at my mess. Looking at the coats, there's these blue little dots. And I could just wipe those off with some paper. Keep saying paper. Water. Anyway, so this is just telling you where the carriers will go. And you mark these with a chalk or a pen like this by poking a hole through it. And yeah, that's how you know where those little carriers go. I think that's it for the markings on this particular pattern. But sometimes these markings come with, like, you know how it says here view A and D, so you would only use these for view A and D, which are the ones with the belts. I'm not using a belt, so I don't have to mark these because I'm just going to make it without the belt. There are more markings on here that I wanted to go over. This is the sleeve. These little dots here are little dots for gathering, for when you're setting in the sleeve, but I usually just do a basting stitch, which is like a really long stitch that you can pull out later. And don't really do the dots. This will tell you where the center of the sleeve is, but what I usually do is I'll fold my sleeve in half and I'll mark the center before I set it in the shoulder, and I'll show you that when I am sewing it together. So I have all my pieces cut out and we're going to start pinning it. But first I want to show you the instructions, which I'll show you next. So this is what the instructions look like. It has little sewing directions that you want to read, the cutting layouts, and all of this stuff, the sizing and all of that. Has these little markings that will be like in the instructions, and I believe in here it tells you what the markings mean, or while you're reading it'll tell you what to do. It's one of the easy patterns, so it does kind of tell you how to do all of this, and most patterns do show you what it looks like. I did make a YouTube video on how to get started, or how I started sewing. I did have to go on YouTube or on Google to find out what most of these things meant, because I didn't quite understand what they meant in these pictures. So that's why in that video I said that it does require research when you do these, if you're like me and you need to visually see it and not just like a picture in a pattern. So here it tells you how to lay out your pattern. I mean, you could lay it out how you want, but this is an example of if you have anything that's 44 inches or 45 inches wide. That means your fabric when you first get it. If you have a 60-inch wide fabric, on the packaging it tells you how much fabric you need for your size. Right here there's a key that says this is the right side, so if it's darker it's the right side, lighter is the wrong side. So that's this. So it's telling you to cut one on the wrong side with the pattern facing down, and then one with the pattern facing up. So basically this is how it suggests that you cut the pattern pieces here. And then it goes into the instructions of putting it together. So this is for A, B, C, and D. I believe that's all the views on this pattern. Sorry, I had to grab the thing here. So it tells you all of them. So what I was told in the class was to mark the instructions, so read through them first, that go to what you're making. I'm making view A, but if you look here, it goes into telling you how to make view C. This is not what I'm doing. So I would go from 1 to 4. I'd skip 5 and 6, and then I would continue on 7 and 8. Of course, 9 and 10 as well. I wouldn't do 11, 12, and 13 because that's for the tie, and I'm not using a tie. So that is what I'll be doing. I'll be doing from 1 to 4, skipping those 2, 5, and 6, and then doing 7 through 10. And I have them all marked, so I know which ones are the instructions that I need to follow. Okay, so number 1 says to stay stitch 1/4 inch from the neck edge on the front and the back section. So it shows you right here. And that's what I'm going to do to my fabric right now. So basically I'm setting my stitch to the widest and longest, so that I can pull these stay stitches out later on when I'm done with the duster, so that they're not in there permanently. They'll be harder if they're smaller and tighter. So the plate on my sewing machine shows me different measurements right on it, so I know where to put it. I know that I have a walking foot on, but my regular foot, if I line it up with the edge of the foot, it's 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to do that with this too. It's about 1/4 inch. And then when I'm sewing everything together, you're going to see me over by this line here, which is the 5/8 inch line. So yeah, we'll get started. So this is the last piece I need to stay stitch. And I don't back stitch. I leave my tails long so that it's easy to pull out later. Pull the strings out. So I don't know if you can see the stitching here, but it's just a little stitch to keep it in place when you are sewing it all together, so it's not getting all warped or whatever. There we go. Now on to the next step. So the next step says to put the fabrics right side together and stitch the center back seam. which I'm going to do now. I'm going to pin it together here. This is the center back seam, and I have the right sides of my fabric together. I know they look exactly alike, except that if you feel it, the front is like, has more texture to it than the back. So that's how I know that they're the right sides are together. So I'm going to pin that now, and then we're going to stitch it. I did forget to mention that in the sewing directions, it tells you what your seam allowance is going to be. It says 5/8 unless otherwise stated. So I'm going to sew this with a 5/8. And I do not have a serger. I just have a regular sewing machine, but I do have a machine that does an overcast stitch. There's a lot of fraying here, and I'm going to just, once I do this seam, I'm going to cut it close to the edge, and then I'm going to do an overcast stitch so that it doesn't keep fraying like this. Also, don't forget to set your machine back to the preferred stitch length or whatever stitch length it suggests in your sewing manual. And this is what it suggests for mine, and it works pretty well with my machine. And here we are. We're just gonna put this together, and also make sure you backstitch to secure your stitch at the beginning and at the end. Still on 2, I'm going to do the shoulder seams now and the side seams as shown there, and then we can move on to the sleeves. So I'm doing the shoulder seams now. And just like that, your duster is almost finished. Now we move on to step 3, which says right sides together, stitch underarm seams of sleeve 3 or 7. Like this. So from the underarm down, we're going to stitch it. And then it also tells us to stitch the hem in place. So that's the hem of the sleeve. I'm doing this one here. So we'll be stitching that together. Here are my sleeves. So we're on step 3. Almost done. So I had to stop for a cookie break. These are delicious. Anyway, I just wanted to show you guys right here how my notches are matching. So the whole time I've been matching my notches and my corners and all that stuff. So all the little markings I made, I've been matching them up so you guys see for yourselves. This is the sleeve. I pinned it. I'm going to sew it, then I'm going to hem it. I'm going to do the other sleeve, and then we'll do the setting in of the sleeve on the duster. So to get a little bit more detailed on the instructions, where here it says tuck under raw edge to meet crease, it's basically telling you to iron this to the 5/8 of an inch, and then you're going to fold it, the raw edge, towards where you towards where the crease of the that you made ironing is, and then you're gonna fold it again. So that's what it's basically saying here. That's what we're gonna do. So when you're ironing, you kind of want to know what kind of fabric you're using. I have no clue what fabric I'm using, so I'm going against my own advice. But when you're fabric shopping, try to see on the bolt if it tells you what kind of fabric it is. Or you can just use a pressing cloth. I use an old like scarf that I've had since I was like 17 years old to press on, so I don't burn my fabric. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to press that hem up using a sewing gauge. So I went ahead and made the little crease right here with the ironing, with the iron, using my sewing gauge set to 5/8 of an inch. It's upside down, but you can see where it's at. And then what it's telling you is to take this edge and bring it up to the crease and then fold it over again. And that's how you're going to make your narrow hem to make it all nice and neat. Oh my gosh, what is with this focus? There we go. See? And then you're going to stitch it like that. So here are the sleeves, all hemmed and ready to be put into the duster, kimono, cardigan thingy. Okay, so I marked the top of my shoulder seam, or where it's gonna go on the shoulder seam on my sleeve with some tailor chalk. So this is the sleeve. I basically just folded it in half like this from the seams of the sleeve, and I determined where the top edge is. This is going to go into the shoulder seam in the duster and in the armholes. So yeah, that's how I'm going to line it up. So here we go, one sleeve's in. Now to do the other one. So here's the sleeve, and I said I was going to make a basting stitch. It's that long stitch, and basically you can take one of the strings, one of the threads, and pull it to gather it, so it's easier to set in your sleeve. The first sleeve I didn't do it like this. I kind of freehanded it. Came out pretty good, so but I suggest doing this. It's easier, and you can pull it from the other side as well to kind of round it. So I'm going to be lining up the chalk with the shoulder seam, and then I'm going to be pulling this so that it all sets in there. See, I just gather it all up, and it makes like a little cap. See the shoulder? You can kind of see the shape of the shoulder here. There we go. So when you're doing the sleeves, you want to get the wrong side of your duster out, and you're going to put the right side of your sleeve in through the armhole, and you're going to match these seams. Really quick before my phone dies. I matched my underarm seams here. I matched the chalk with the shoulder seam here, and I gathered it enough for it to all fit in here perfectly. And now I'm just going to sew it with the seam allowance. So I finished putting in the sleeves. Both of my sleeves are in. Now I just have to do this here. Hem the bottom edge of the duster, and then I'm going to be doing this bias taping. I'm really debating on if I'm just going to hem it or if I'm going to do the bias tape, but I'm leaning towards doing the bias tape. Here it is. It's all done. Kind of reminds me of a Harry Potter robe. But the last step is just to style it and take pictures in it. I do still have to fix my insides. They're kind of crazy, but I'll fix them later. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more, please send me a message, and I'll see about recording my next project and putting it on the stories and then highlighting it. And this will be highlighted in my page as well on my Instagram, so you guys can see it at any time. If you're gonna do this pattern, you can take a look at my stories and sew along with it. Bye. So I just wanted to mention a couple of things I would have done differently with this pattern. I would have used a flowier fabric. This one really looks like some Harry Potter robes. Wait, I don't know which way to turn the camera. Kind of stiff, but it is cute. So I'm still gonna wear it. I have something on Thursday that I have to go to that I'm gonna wear that too. So yes, flowier fabric, and then bias tape. I used the bias tape on the hem for like the neckline and the front of it, and I think I would have went with a thicker bias tape. I believe I had the 1/2 inch one like it said on the pattern, but And again, it could have been smaller. I'm not 100% sure. I kind of just had it on hand and threw it on there. Didn't come out as good as I wanted it to, but it does the job. And also use the fabric that does not fray as much as this one does. So it's not just shredding and I have to do extra stitching and all that stuff. But yeah, that's it. Other than that, it came out pretty good. I like it. Can't wait to wear it.